sponsored by ProLytX. So why do we have this podcast, Mike? What's the purpose of this podcast here?
Purpose of this podcast is to tell the stories of engineering tech. I mean, if you go back, what's that?
What the hell does that mean?
Well, look, if you go back and you look at engineering, you see like pictures of the space shuttle engineering or something. You know, back in the old days, it was literally just rooms of paper with people. Dudes, mostly dudes, leaning over these giant drafting tables, you know, and just drawing all of the stuff. Pencil, paper, that was it. Like the IT guy was just bringing them sharpened pencils.
Was there even an IT guy?
No, he wasn't. I just made that up. So it's just...
There was no IT guy.
Just like new sheet of paper. I don't know. I didn't live in these days. I mean, I could try to find out. I've heard people
probably a lot smarter back then.
I've heard people. I'm sure they had to spell better than you. I know that because they had no spell check for sure. They had to spell foundation and all kinds of stuff. Blake can't spell, by the way. So if you think back to those days, it was just paper and pencil. Right, and they designed spaceships and buildings and refineries, all kinds of cool stuff with that.
Oh man, sent a man to the moon.
Sent a man to the moon. They had some computer programs. I've seen the movies. But so what happened then is in the 80s, AutoCAD came out and Excel came out, and the computer, personal computer, I guess, came to be. And I mean, you know, Bill, I guess what, in Bill Higgs' book, he talks about hiring people that could bring their own computer to work because the company didn't have computers.
The company didn't have any computers.
Like if you had your tool belt was, you might have had a computer you could bring to work, and then you could start drawing something. So people started drawing drawings and typing data into, you know, rudimentary applications. And that's, I guess, when IT started having a part in engineering.
They had a part because they needed like the servers, or not the servers, but like
you had to install the computer off the floppy disk
or
some sort of disk at that point, and you had to make the license work or whatever. And so,
that was back in the day where the license was on a dongle that literally plugged into the computer.
You had like a tower with your computer and your little CR. Anyway, I mean,
the monitor
neither of us
weighed like 500 pounds.
Well, the first ones were tiny, right? Like a little bitty screen, like a little bitty thing. It might have still been heavy, but then, as they got bigger, huge. So then, and what we saw, I guess, from 1980 to 2000, 1985 to 2000, the engineering role stayed the same, basically. That's probably not true, but I mean, they were still trying to accomplish the same basic thing, but now all of a sudden, IT became an enabler, right? They had to be involved, because when I started in 2002, you know, obviously we all had computers at that point, but it was still old school. You called IT for every new program, and they would install everything, and if something broke, you know, I mean, there was a whole thing. So we were dependent. By the time I started my career, there was a dependency, but engineering still was doing engineering. IT was just a facilitator. They were just getting...
They were just there to help you get the tools in place to do the job.
Yes.
Basically.
But the next 10 years, that changed pretty drastically. Because now, instead of using a file-based system like AutoCAD and Excel, a lot of the engineering was going to systems with databases in the back end. So it was a drawing tool with a SQL or Oracle or some proprietary fancy database that had to be hosted on a server, and it had to have more elevated virus protections and all this kind of stuff. So the complaints, I guess the challenges of that 2000s type time frame was, oh man, my app's not working, my computer's not working, and then IT would be like, well, no, you can't do this or you can't do that. And all of a sudden and then when you wanted a server-based application, you know, it was set up and managed by IT, but then engineers were trying to use it, and all of a sudden those two type of personas The engineering persona and the IT persona they were so intertwined
They're
that
kind of almost at odds,
almost at odds. Yes, because IT was saying, "Hey, we're doing all the things you told us to do. Like we set up your server, you have your licenses, you have what you need." But the engineering team was like, "Yeah, but it doesn't quite work right, and I don't have the rights to do it." And the big thing for me was working in the automation department, in the industrial automation department. It was like we had admin rights to our machines because we were the weird guys that did programming. So they let us have that. And so we would install all kinds of crazy stuff. And then IT would get upset, right? Because they're like, what are you doing? You have all these extra programs. But like if you being in sort of the instrument and the engineering space, you had less of that control, right? With your machines?
Yeah, so I guess at that time, really what you're saying there is that IT was trying to work to keep the company or the business safe while the engineering and the design side was trying to work to produce deliverables or documentation. But those two things were kind of commingling. You needed those IT systems to be able to do that.
Yeah, and they didn't.
And
neither
to collaborate on your work, right, with other engineering teams.
You needed fancier systems, so more sophisticated. Let me use a better word. You needed more sophisticated systems, and as you needed those, they naturally fell into the lap of IT, and then IT
because it was software.
Because it was software.
And because it was hardware type related. So
exactly.
IT just controlled it.
Yes,
but they didn't really understand why, or the value, maybe, that they were controlling it, why they were doing it. You think?
Yeah, I think that's true.
Okay.
Not in a bad way. Just like, hey, that's not necessarily my skill. My job as an IT guy, I think you would hear them say is I'm supposed to just install these things and make sure that they open. Right. Beyond that, it's on you. But I think what we learned is that those sophisticated systems don't really work all that well in that environment. You actually do have to do more in the configuration and the tuning to make all that work. So it was like it's kind of like I'd rather have the engineer try to do that, but then they're a risk if they get in too much, right? They're in the back door, they're in the areas.
Because they might not know all the security protocols, or they might not know the network well enough of how everything is related to each other.
Right, and we started, we were in the early 2000s. If you, in this little story here, but if you go forward like to 2010 almost, at that point, now you're getting much more into workshare. You're getting into global projects where like you've got project teams that are split across the globe and they're supposed to work the same apps, the same tools. And so now you've got teams across the globe trying to use what at that time Citrix was the enabler for that. It was like the tool that could allow different people from different offices to sort of remote in and do work. I think also in the late 2000s, you had this high tendency to outsource the IT support to a team sort of overseas. And the challenge with that was you couldn't really go down the hall and explain your problem to somebody anymore. And you had a time zone difference, and there were some challenges there. Well, so I wanted to tell an anecdote on that. To me, I don't know if it's very funny, but I mean, to me, that really defined itself with two systems. One was Citrix and one was Active Directory. Both of those were where the whole IT engineering just like hit a wall, right? Because
I remember the Citrix. Oh, that's terrible stuff right there.
Well, Citrix was
anybody using Citrix.
It was
almost make me cry.
It was the remote solution, right, to enabling someone from the other side of the world to use your app, like right there in your Houston server. Like we're gonna set it up, and then we're gonna give them a Citrix portal, and they're gonna zip in and they're gonna do work, and it's gonna feel great. It's not gonna be slow or crappy or anything, right? That was the idea. But I just remember working with and that was purely IT, right? Citrix was squarely in IT. But at some point, what we would do, I think we would give them instructions. Like, here's what our goal is. We want this tool to work on the other side of the world. And the guy was like, Yeah, sure, fine, no problem. Tell me what to do. So they would go off, they would take notes, then go and try to install it, right? And then they would say, hey, it's ready. You guys test it out.
And then it doesn't work.
Oh, yeah. We'd be like, dude, no, it doesn't work. And then he's like, well, why doesn't it work? I was like, well, you got here's this text file buried 13 folders deep in the program files. You have to edit that text file, right? And he's like, okay, how do I do that? I'm like, well, then you have to go set up this ODBC, this database connection over here. And here's the deal. I need that to like automatically like happen every time they hit the launch button. It's got to do all these things. And finally,
the horror stories.
Finally, the Citrix guy was like, here's the deal. I'm not doing any of that crap. Here's the deal. I'm going to give you this box.
You do that.
You take it. Yeah. For the next 5 days, you own it. Do whatever the heck you got to do to it, right? And then return it to me, and we will see if we can make it work. And that was like the beginning. That was
the engineering IT.
That was the bridge, right?
That was the bridge.
That was the guy. He was like, I quit, not doing that, right? And then the other one.
The horror stories. I got a horror story on that one.
Okay, you tell that, and then I'm going to do my Active Directory.
The horror story. Working with a Citrix guy, going back and forth, trying to get this engineering application to work. Smart plan instrumentation wouldn't work. Didn't work. Citrix guy blames the application. Application guy, me, blames the Citrix guy. It was not good. Not a good scenario. So I said, hey, I'll tell you what. Give me a box that does not have Citrix on it. No Citrix. Give it to me. Completely. Get the box. No Citrix. Install the application. Get it working. Able to log in. Generate loop drawings. Do everything. Great. Works. Put the antivirus on it. Still works. Install Citrix. Broke. Like instantaneously. Doesn't work anymore.
Even though all it was supposed to be is a portal into that box.
That's correct. It's all just a portal into the box. And then like you said, what you have to do when you do that is then you have to get into the details and you have to start editing registry keys and figuring out how certain files work within the network and configuration files and how user accounts are going to work and all of this other stuff that technically is like not in the Citrix IT world. But it's also
that's
not,
on the app side.
But it's also not in the app side necessarily, right? It's like in this nebulous world, like who's going to do it, right? And then the Citrix guy punts and is like, you do it. And you're like, well, you're the Citrix guy. You're the IT guy. I'm just the app guy. Like, you're supposed to make it work.
No, he's like,
right?
Get this guy a password.
And then somebody has to make it work. So here comes in this engineering IT guy that is like, look, both of you guys sit down. I'm going to make it work.
But here's the deal. I need a password from you, and I need you to just be nice because I'm gonna do my job.
I'm gonna do my job, and I'm gonna do the need.
I'm gonna fill the gap. Okay.
Yeah. Fill the gap. There you go.
Okay.
Engineering IT guy walks in and says, both of you guys sit down. I'm gonna make it work. And that's who you are, right?
That's what a lot of ProLytX does. Now the other one there, just real short, was Active Directory, which so these apps all come with their own little security setup, right? In the old days, they come and every little app has its own login, password. People are managing, and then at some point, IT is like, well, hey man, could we use like their Windows, like their profile, their
Active
ID
Directory.
Yeah, right. And the software vendors started enabling that, right? And so that was cool. So I remember in that same time frame, just right after Citrix, we went down the hall to the Active Directory guy, and we said, "Here's the deal. We want to use your stuff, right? He's using Active Directory for managing the whole company, right? So if you don't know, like user group for, engineers, user group for drafting, user group for vice presidents, whatever. You got all these groups for the company. They're all in Active Directory at that time. I don't know what it is exactly nowadays called, but anyway, same concept, right? And we went down there and we're like, hey, dude, we want to use Active Directory to control security for all of these engineering apps, and we want to use it on all the projects. And he was like, okay, that sounds cool because that's new scope, right? He's more important. But then we were like, here's the deal. every project needs like 5 groups.
Its own groups.
And no, it doesn't. Yeah, it needs every app for every project needs like 5 groups, and then those groups have to have special permissions. And he's like, dude, you want like 5,000 new groups? And we're like, it gets even better, Edward. We want 5,000, but then every time we start a new project, which is like, I don't know, once a week, we just spool up like another 10 or 20, you know? So it's like just going to grow. It's just going to balloon.
The permissions are slightly different from project to project.
Yes. And he was like, oh, okay.
That sucks.
I don't think I like this strategy. And we're like, well, just, can we do it? And he's like, no, you can't do it. This is my space. We're like, so when we need those extra few, how long is it going to take you? He's like, I don't know, submit a ticket. Well, how long is it going to take you? I don't know, like, I'll get to it in a few days or something. Like, no, dude, we can't, like, wait a few days. We have people waiting to work, right? We don't get paid as a company unless those people work. And then he scratched his head, and he's like, I don't know how we're going to do this. And then finally we're like, look, is there any way for you to just like fence off a little space in your world where you can protect, you can give us rights to it, but just trust, like you could destroy it at any moment. Like, we can't do anything else. Just give us a little bitty playground where we can create these things. And we'll do all 20 of them, no worries. Like, we'll create it. And then at first they hated that idea, right? Just like the Citrix guy. He was like, no, this is my server. But eventually he was like, here's the deal, man. I built you a little playground. It's called it's the organizational unit for engineering apps or something.
It's called Engineering Application Active Directory.
Yeah, and it got flooded.
EADA. It
flooded with all the stuff that we needed. But that's, to me, that, like, if I had to put a finger on it, does that make sense? Like the moment where you could see that coming to, because neither side wanted to own that. Does that make sense?
Oh, no.
Like, there was nobody fighting for that. That was like,
it's
like a middle ground that nobody wanted to own.
No. But somebody walked in the door and was like, hey guys, we got to get shit done here.
Well, and you have the same discussion last time. You have the same discussion with DBAs, like on the database, right? They want to own the database, but they don't want to write any queries. They don't want to actually deal with the data, right? It's like, no, I just own the database. But you're like, well, yeah, but unless we write some intelligent stuff to use the data, it doesn't have any value. And the DBA is like, no. You got my job description wrong. I just make the database available, right? The app does all the work. Like, yeah, but when it doesn't do the work, the middle person has to step in and do that, fill that gap.
Oh, yeah.
The tech guy.
That's right. So we got off on a little bit of a tangent there. I think the original question was why did we start this podcast, right? And I guess the answer to that question is we started this podcast to give a voice or ideas of exactly what the industry is facing in the engineering tech world that's coming about. Is that why?
Those stories that we just told right there are so interesting. We wanted to put them down on tape so that people could hear that.
Well, and
there was some sarcasm in that, if you didn't catch that. I think the audience got it.
I think from my perspective, too, there's valuable knowledge in some of those stories as to how the industry is trending and where it's going, right? And then how it's going to be successful in using these applications.
Well, in the new use for what we were just talking about, the new situations are all about the cloud, how do you make the decision on which cloud? How do you integrate the things between the clouds? How do you handle the APIs?
It's getting even more complicated.
It's getting more complicated, and there's nothing wrong with IT having a skill set, which is being good at the infrastructure and the security, right? Doing the things. And there's nothing wrong with engineers being really focused on selecting the right equipment and drawing the perfect drawing and doing the things, right? It's just that in the middle, that third persona of engineering tech is a legitimate need. It's a middle ground there that there's no clear path to, and it has interesting stories. So we're here to tell those stories.
Well, yeah, I agree. I see where you're going with it. So basically, it started out engineering and design was more like a manual paper task, and then as the applications IT kind of came into it, technology developed, AutoCAD, Excel, those type of things, but it's still individualistic, if you will, and still controlled by the engineering side. But IT was kind of supporting it. As that technology developed even further, what you got into was more like intelligent design type systems, which resolved or made, I guess, IT have a bigger role in the engineering space. That's kind of where you're going with it. So the purpose, I guess, of this podcast would be to talk about where we are today, huh? Is that where you're getting at?
Yeah, well, where I was going with that story was you had that progression, like you say, from paper to apps, then to more sophisticated apps, and what you realize is there needed to be a third party in that discussion, and that third party was sort of the specialist that bridged the gap between those two personas. So you could still let IT manage servers and databases. You could still let engineers be engineers, and someone in the middle who sort of just found themselves there, like
the engineering technologist.
The engineering technologist, who just like
we're coining new phrases.
Who just like tripped into that spot, like, oops, look where I am. I happen to like data. I happen to feel like an engineer. I've worn the boots before. I've gone out to the field. I think I'll just hang here and like make this space better. And so the purpose of this podcast is everything in that space, like where we get along well with IT, where we don't, where we get along well with engineering and where we don't. How does somebody get to this space? What happens in this space? Like, who are these people, right? Are they? That's the question, right?
That's the question. Who are these people? You go into organizations sometimes, and what does those organizations have? Do they have like a space, like the companies that you work with now? Do they have a space, or is it still segregated like that?
Oh, I think
what are you seeing in the industry?
So what I'm seeing is there is a systems team sometimes. Maybe they're even called engineering IT. Sometimes we've heard it, like an engineering IT team. But
so is that this new operational IT?
It's related to that. When I hear operational IT, though, I think more closely to the control system. So
okay,
on the
process network.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that's they're like together, but you still have different like spins on it, right? Yeah. So when I think engineering IT or engineering tech, I am thinking about smart drawings and thinking about databases that are, the digitization, the digital twin type management, right? When I think OT, I'm thinking about the operations of the control systems, how that data comes to play, how that gets to the business land, how you make sense of all that. So, and I think they're together. They're both engineering tech, but I don't think OT covers it all. Do you?
No, I agree. I don't think it necessarily covers it all. So hold on. Moving into that realm, you're getting into a little bit, I guess, of maybe what our sponsor here does.
3 primary areas, I think, I would say 1 and 2 are very much related to the little discussion we just had, like engineering tech, OT, and then the third one is crosses over both. So if you look at from an engineering tech standpoint, I'm talking about engineering applications. If you're building a modern project, you've got a 3D model and you've got you've got your piping drawings and your instrument and electrical and process engineering, all of that. And if you have 100 people on a project team, those people have to share a data set. They have to contribute. If you're going to do it well, you're going to do $1 billion job with hundreds of people on it. There are tools in the industry that are needed to make that successful. That's just not a bunch of people with spreadsheets and individual drawings, because you're typing in data points that are common across multiple documents or drawings. So it's better to have one system. There's some systems by Hexagon's a great software provider in that industry. Aviva provides a lot of software. AspenTech provides software. So we talk the first, like the area that I guess ProLytX works, engineering apps, taking the smart drawings from the projects. So that's one. That all has to do with, that all leads up to the digital twin. The second area would be industrial safety solutions. And that is tied to the actual safety and control systems that are in the plants, and how those systems are tested to make sure that they're set up properly, how they're documented, and how they're testing their functionality. So essentially, if you take the type of skill set that's used to manage a database, you're able to query the data, you're able to gather the data, you're able to write a little widget to build a function that help do a job. Taking that and applying it to real data that you have coming from the safety system is something that the ProLytX team does. Primarily with, one big application we have is something we call Test Drive, and it's for testing safety systems. And we're gonna dive into that on a whole special section, but it's really like an automated test to make sure that if you're protecting a compressor and it has 1,000 things, different permutations that can happen, right? This pressure goes high, you have to close a valve. This temperature goes too high, you shut down something. You're protecting the machinery. Well, the test on that is a complex test. And when it's done manually, you can miss steps, you can not have good tracking. And so one solution there ProLytX provides is an automated test for that whole thing, to where you have a full test track and a record of everything that you've done, and then you can stamp it and know that it's safe. So that's one area. But essentially, additionally, doing analytics on the data from the safety system, and I think too, taking that data and making it available to compare with that digital twin and to interact with that digital twin, because those are two different things. The digital twin is like the blueprint, like the digital blueprint of the plant, and the safety system is a important operator in that whole process, and that's air gapped usually, and so being able to take that information and match it up with the blueprint and make it work. So those are two areas where we do a lot of work. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah. You do anything with technology?
Well, yeah, and then beyond that, the fundamentals of both of those solutions are development, tech development. And so being able to create a database solution, create a web application, develop AI technology that can contribute to both of those solutions is like it's both an underlying enabler for the first two areas, and then also can stand alone. Like, we've had people come to us, describe their situations, their workflow, where it's just, I think we had one of our clients come to us and say, look, I feel like we're just burning money. Like, we're doing stuff. Money is just vaporizing in our office. You can watch it because we're just missing an opportunity. We're doing something in a totally manual way. Can you outline a process? Can you do a custom process to help develop a solution that can reduce that wasted time and effort? And so in that case, it's like, well, yeah, but that's a custom development solution. So we take that underlying skill set and frame a project.
Frame it up.
Yeah, for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're, and we have diagrams for this that we have to dig into, but I think the high level is, You got engineering drawings, which is why and how the thing was built. And then you have the operational technology or the safety system as to, how it's running today. And then you have the development tools that you need in order to make both of those really swift and cool. So you in particular have had some great interest with the AI technology, and I think that's an important step here, or important topic to get on, and sort of how that applies to these areas. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that goes into more of the digital twin side of things, and how you can use AI to do advanced analytics and actually help build out that digital twin within your workflow processes and whatnot. There's a lot of neat things going on there, and hopefully we'll be able to talk about some of those in future podcasts. Oh man, that sounds like a great podcast. I hope everybody thinks so, and they're all willing to listen to our nonsense and hear valuable information. Hopefully we'll have the chance to expand a little bit more on what ProLytX does and how we see the industry and the insights and whatnot and where it's going, and then maybe get some outside people in the industry come in and give their input on it, right? I'd like to hear from some vendors. I'd like to hear from some people at these companies that are actually using these type of applications and fitting in that group. So I look forward to continuing on this.
Yeah, I would say on that note, we probably ought to be a little bit better about saying, look us up on LinkedIn or comment or something. And if you have a topic or you want to be a part of it, then that's what we're going to do, is look to expand that in the future.
Definitely. Look us up on LinkedIn. Look us up on Twitter and all the other social media accounts out there. You can find us just by searching for ProLytX. And if you have an idea of a topic or something you think is important and need to discuss, that's what we're here for. We're here to discuss it. So I appreciate everybody listening in.